You are Locked On 49ers Postcast, part of Locked On Sports San Francisco on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yo, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. You may know me as the former producer for the Murph and Mac Morning Show on KMBR. And today, the San Francisco 49ers were officially eliminated from playoff contention, falling 29-17 to the Miami Dolphins. They were actually eliminated just minutes prior to kickoff after the Washington Commanders beat the Philadelphia Eagles in a very thrilling finish, making the result of this one somewhat meaningless. The Miami Dolphins did do a lot of creative things on offense today, heavily involving their running backs in both the run and the pass game. And on the other side of that same coin, the 49ers couldn't involve a running back in today's game at all to save their life. For today, at least, Mike McDaniel surpassed his teacher Kyle Shanahan in play calling creativity and in being the running back whisperer that we know Kyle Shanahan to be. It looks like Mike McDaniel is becoming that same kind of coach. We'll break it all down, but first I want to thank all of you for watching us on the Locked On Sports San Francisco YouTube channel. Please hit that subscribe button. Thanks also for listening on the Locked On 49ers podcast feed and making us your first listen following these 49ers games. Make sure to check out the Locked On 49ers Daily Show for more in-depth coverage. Brian Peacock does a great job. You can now start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as I said, the 49ers didn't really have a whole lot or really anything to play for playoff positioning-wise in this, the end of this result would not change their season this year. Either way, no playoffs for the 49ers. Regardless of the result in this one. But you wanted to see this team show you something because pride has been lacking from this team for pretty much the entire season. I mean, we won't rip on the 49ers defense for not looking like itself all year when they had as many injuries as they did, but there were a lot of pride issues with this team, very evident by how we saw last week's game turn out with Devondre Campbell literally leaving and walking out on his teammates. This team has not felt like a team, like the 49ers teams that we have been accustomed to, at least this year at all. I mean, the cohesiveness, the togetherness, it just has not been there for really even a single moment this year. Maybe for the last, the first half of the Rams game, maybe when you had Dre Greenlaw back on the field and the defense started to look like its old self. But then when he came out, you saw what it reverted back to, and it did not look very good again. And I mean, that's kind of been the theme with this whole 49ers season. You heard Tony Romo on the broadcast saying that it's a season of what ifs this year for the 49ers. And I completely agree with that. What if, you had a full offseason of development for Ricky Pearsall? What if you had Trent Williams in all these games? What if Charvarius Ward and Trent Williams both didn't have to go through the terrible things that they've gone through in their personal lives? What if Fred Warner's ankle never broke? What if Dre Greenlaw's recovery went a little bit smoother and he was able to come back a little bit earlier? What if Christian McCaffrey never had to, deal with all the Achilles stuff? There's so many what ifs. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel missed time. George Kittle missed time. There's so many guys. Talanoa Hufanga, again, missing time. Losing Javon Hargrave, Nick Bosa at various points. You lost every key player for at least one game this year. We even had a Brandon Allen start at quarterback this year. Every single week, it seemed like the 49ers had some kind of massive hurdle they were going to have to overcome. And it just didn't ever work out. This offense never got humming. It never looked like a 49ers offense. They never looked like they have the same creativity, the same flow. Look at as evidenced by today's game. How many pre-snap penalties did the 49ers have? I didn't keep count because I just got kind of tired of counting after like 5 of them. But Ricky Pearsall by himself had like 2 or 3 just like illegal formation penalties because he wasn't covering up the ball on the line of scrimmage. And you cannot have those things. Those are just such simple procedural things. And I got to think that maybe if the guy didn't get shot in the chest earlier this year and actually had a full offseason with the team, maybe these things don't happen. But again, it's just one of those seasons where every single step of the way, it felt like the 49ers had you ever seen the movie Final Destination? It felt like this was the Final Destination season for the 49ers. I mean, every single possible thing that they avoided last year on their road to the Super Bowl, where they were remarkably healthy, oh, it came back 10 times harder this year. All that stuff that should have happened last year, 49ers got all of it and more this season. Just like in those Final Destination movies, couldn't avoid the ultimate outcome of everybody on this team becoming decimated with injuries. They were just an injury ward, a walking infirmary at various points in time this year. And it just all to such key positions too. I mean, you lose Brandon Ayuk for the whole year. Deebo Samuel not looking like himself for the majority of the year, also getting hurt early in the season. George Kittle. I mean, the offensive line looks just like Swiss cheese without Trent Williams out there. Aaron Banks goes down in this game. You have so many injuries all over this offensive line, all over this offense, all over this defense. And it's just a season of what ifs. It feels like a season that it just never got off the ground. It never took flight. And the Golden State Warriors, the San Francisco 49ers are going to be paying the price for this through the offseason. There, I think, needs to be some very, very big changes that happen to this team. I think that the offensive line, you start right there, because you see what happens when you don't have a backup for Trent Williams. And I mean, he is, one of the oldest linemen in the NFL. You got to have a contingency plan. He's not going to be there forever. You got to have something to back him up at left tackle. That, the Moore was great as the backup today until he got hurt. And then, you're leaning on Burford as your number 3 backup, and that is just not ideal. And Burford losing a job at guard earlier this year, you don't want that guy protecting your quarterback's blind side. And, I mean, the rest of the 49ers offensive line has been suspect. I mean, Brendel, not very good. McKivitz, not very good. Dom Pooney, we'll talk about him later. I do think that Dom Pooney showed us a lot this year. I think that he is going to definitely be a major cog in this 49ers offensive line going forward, but you got to rebuild this. You got to rebuild this starting right now. I mean, you need to put a lot of work in the offseason into beefing up this O-line. Brock Purdy looks like he's been running for his life all season long, and especially again today under constant duress, having to use the legs. I mean, it seemed like he was getting hit every single time that he dropped back to throw. He never had a clean pocket in this one. It just tough all day long for Brock Purdy. Dolphins had 6 quarterback hits on him, and I mean, just constant pressure, 3 sacks as well. And even then, it felt like Brock was scrambling forward for several, short yardage gains where he was able to get out of pressure or throw the ball away at the last minute. I mean, it was constant. And yes, this is a very good Miami Dolphins defense, a very underrated Miami Dolphins defense, top 10 NFL defense. And really, people think of the Dolphins, they think of high flying, scoring, Tyreek Hill, deep bombs, and that couldn't be further from what this Miami Dolphins offense and team has been this year. They have been built around this defense. When they have one, it's been because of that defense and the short passing game, which sounds kind of like the San Francisco 49ers of years past. And I mean, really, when I was watching the Dolphins out there, I mean, at least for today, I mean, they've had their issues this season. They're 7-8 on the season, so not a hugely different win-loss record than the San Francisco 49ers. They have the same record coming into today's game. But the Dolphins kind of looked like they just out 49ers the 49ers. You know what I mean? Like, they were doing all those orbit motions and all that eye candy with the play action and everything just to swing back the other way and find little tight end screens and things like that. How often do you see the 49ers just gashing teams doing stuff like that? Or we got to talk about Achane. Like, this guy, I've just ruined my whole weekend by ending my fantasy football life today in the semifinals, which I'm sure he did for a lot of other people out there too. But he also partially ended the 49ers football season. I mean, they were already done before this game started, but he added insult to injury by doing everything that he did out there. He's their leading receiver as a running back, not just the leading receiver for the running back board. Like, he was their leading receiver. 6 receptions, 70 yards on 7 targets. He had a long of 20. Like, they were moving him all over the field. Those weren't just catches out of the backfield and screens and things like that. I mean, they were lining him up out wide, catching, in breaking routes over the middle of the field, out breaking routes near the sideline, screen passes, swing passes. This guy was all over the place, and the 49ers could not stop him. Meanwhile, he has 17 carries for 120 yards in that long of a 50-yard touchdown at the very end, which, by the way, was definitely holding on Tyreek Hill. He just wrapped up Charvarius Ward on the edge right there, did not allow Ward to run free. Ward was literally holding his hand up, looking at the official like, what the hell, man, throw the flag. It didn't matter anyways. Dolphins still would have won with or without that score. But just to add insult to injury, Achane just looking a lot like a certain running back that we've missed all season long. Dude looked a lot like Christian McCaffrey out there. Very decisive runner, hitting the hole with a ton of burst, tons of speed, and ability to outrun this entire defense. Shifty, tough to bring down. I mean, Achane showed us a lot today for that Miami Dolphins offense. And, I mean, they were just going to him constantly. And who was the number 2 leading receiver for them? Oh, their tight end, Jonnu Smith. Again, this sounds very much like a San Francisco 49ers game when the offense runs properly. Today, for the San Francisco 49ers, the offense absolutely did not function properly. And we'll talk about that next on the Locked On 49ers postcast. Today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for shots to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Join now because this holiday season, PrizePicks is giving away 2 free picks in December. They're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Again, sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, and today the San Francisco 49ers, their playoff hopes officially end. They were pretty much dead in the water coming into this week anyways after losing last week. But after the Washington Commanders won just minutes prior to this game, the 49ers were officially eliminated from playoff contention. They played inspired football, I would say. They did not just roll over and die in this one, even though they did lose by multiple touchdowns at the end. But the 49ers in this one, they I thought, other than the run game, looked decent. The defense held up for the most part. It kind of fell apart there at the end with giving up 8-yard run after 8-yard run, again with Dre Greenlaw not on the field. We got to talk about his importance in bringing him back a little bit later on in the show. But the offense today, man, just putrid. I mean, other than Brock Purdy, who had a pretty solid game. He did throw that pick at the end there. But under constant duress, had 3 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, still threw for 313 and 2 touchdowns, threw the ball 40 times. And it seemed like every single snap, the 49ers and the Miami Dolphins and everybody else down there in Miami knew that Brock Purdy was going to throw the football. The run game, non-existent. Brock Purdy was also the 49ers leading rusher with 26 yards on 4 carries. So Brock Purdy literally doing everything for the 49ers today. He deserves every single piece of the contract he's going to get in this offseason. And I do think that the 49ers give him the contract that he deserves this offseason. You had Patrick Taylor Jr. start at running back today. He had 8 carries, 24 yards, looked completely ineffective all day long. And it's hard to really, blame this guy when he's the 5th running back that the 49ers have had to use this year. 6th if you include, or 7th, I guess, if you include Deebo Samuel and Kyle Juszczyk in that pecking order. I mean, this guy is so far down the roster sheet that it's just, how you can't, at a certain point, you just can't expect guys to play up to the same level of the guy that they're replacing. And once you have so many injuries at one position, it just becomes a hollow point on your team. And that is exactly what this 49ers run game was. It was just a black hole. Anytime that they handed the ball off, it just felt like the Miami Dolphins defense, the interior would just completely collapse around that ball, and it would just had nowhere to go at all. I mean, Brock Purdy had a long of 16 for the longest run of the game. And that's very telling for the 49ers, at least. And there was no possibility that this team could get anything going on the ground at all from the start. And it wasn't just the fact that Patrick Taylor is remarkably bland at running back. It was also that this 49ers offensive line is, one, banged up, and two, just not punishing people the way that they need to be punishing people if you want to win in the NFL. I mean, this line has been a problem all season long. Dom Pooney, you can build on him. His PFF rating for the season is an 83.5 overall. That's good for 6th best among guards. If you like that kind of stuff, if you don't like that kind of stuff, just use your eyeballs and watch this guy blow up massive holes on the right side of the line in the run game. Run blocking, this guy is phenomenal. I think that Dom Pooney is got to be a centerpiece for this team going forward. Feels like a Mike Iupati type player for the 49ers. If you throw back to the Frank Gore days of this team where they ran a lot of power football in between the tackles, and Mike Iupati was a big part of that. Dom Pooney has to be a big part of the 49ers offense next year. But you can't just have one good player on this interior of the line. You got a lot of expiring contracts. One of them is another interior guard, Aaron Banks, the guy who plays opposite Dom Pooney on the left side of the line. His contract is expiring this year. I think it is very important for them to bring Aaron Banks back as well. He's been a pretty solid player, although he has dealt with some injuries. We saw him come out of today's game with another injury. So that's kind of a question mark. You still got to have some guys that can rotate in, like the idea of Christian Feliciano. He was supposed to be that guy to kind of rotate in and be that 6th lineman, you know what I mean, to fill holes when guys inevitably get hurt. He never really was able to get healthy himself this year to provide much help for the 49ers. So you really need to have a lot of these holes filled. And another hole on this offensive line, Jake Brendel in the middle of the line. That's the worst spot. Maybe save for left tackle, but center, I mean, if you don't have a good lockdown center, I mean, that's the quarterback of your offensive line. If you don't have someone who has a good command over the scheme and the concepts of what you're trying to do, is good at reading the defense and what they're trying to do, you're going to be off all season long. And Brendel has had some good years, and this year, frankly, just was not one of them. Jake Brendel looked out of sorts a lot of times. And just as a whole, this 49ers offensive line, almost everybody on this line, including Dom Pooney, just flat out sucks at pass protection. There's no two ways about it. Pass protection this season has been atrocious. It's been a problem. You need to address it. You can no longer have, the entire right side of the line just does not pass block. Dom Pooney, I like him a lot, as I just explained, like the 6th best overall rating for right guards. As far as pass blocking, he's 37th out of the 128 guards ranked on Pro Football Focus. That's not very good. And again, if you aren't a fan of the Pro Football Focus type grade stuff, just use your eyeballs. I mean, this guy is letting people through all the time. He is not very effective on his double teams either. So he needs to improve dramatically at his pass blocking. I think he has the tools to be able to do it. One guy who has shown me he does not have the tools to be able to do it is Colton McKivitz. I am done with Colton McKivitz at right tackle. I need them to move on and figure something else out. The pass blocking at right tackle has been an issue for years. We had that same issue with Mike McGlinchey. He was a great run blocker, but could not pass block on the right side of that line. And then when you have Trent Williams injured and out as often as he has been, also dealing with the horrendous off the field issues, not issues, but turmoil in his family that he's been going through. You need to find somebody else that can also step in and play left tackle as well. You cannot have this many question marks on your offensive line. Trent Williams, obviously, when he is in the game, is not a question mark, but his availability going forward has to be. And you need to be able to address all of these things, because this team right now, offensively, it's got a lot of, shiny bells and whistles. You got Brock Purdy, you got the quarterback, finally. After all these years of Jimmy G and the clamoring for something better, you got something better now. You got Debo, you got Brandon Ayuk, you got George Kittle, you got CMC. Even Jordan Mason is worth mentioning. Guys like that. Ricky Pearsall, you just got a first-round pick wide receiver who looks like he could maybe do some stuff if he has a full offseason of work with this team. You have all this eye candy all over the place, but you got nothing protecting that treasure. It's like you got all these crown jewels and no guards up front. Nobody, you need the knights to protect the king, Brock Purdy back there sitting in his castle. But you don't have that right now. It's this big shiny castle with no security, and everyone's just pillaging Brock Purdy in the backfield. You need guys up front to protect the quarterback. You absolutely need to start there in the offseason. You got plenty of skill position guys. You don't really need more skill position guys. You don't need to go and find some wide receiver who can just go and take over. You got plenty of guys who can go catch the ball and make plays. You need to figure out how to protect your quarterback. That is the number one issue on this offense right now. Guys will get healthier next season. I think there is no possible way that you could deal with as many injuries next year as you did with this year. Nonetheless, you still need to have suitable backups for some of these things. And the thing with the running back position, I mean, you have, 3 suitable backups, and they all got hurt. I mean, Eli Moore, J.P. Mason, and Isaac Guerendo all get hurt this season, and Christian McCaffrey, obviously the starter. I mean, that you can't really account for that. But wide receiver-wise, you're pretty deep as well. Tight end, you're pretty deep. Or not, maybe not deep, but you got George Kittle. That's all you really need. And, I mean, offensive line is the one glaring hole on this team offensively. So you really need to address that in the offseason. And there's a lot of things that you got to address on the defensive side of the ball as well. Pretty much the same thing. Trenches. You got to address the trenches on the defensive side of the ball as well. Again, injuries really ran rabid across the 49ers defensive line this year. I mean, Hargrave lost for the season early on. The 49ers restructured his contract in such a way that they can cut him this offseason and have very minimal contract hit for next year. So that might be something that's on the table. Maybe they look to trade him and get something back. But I have no idea what the 49ers are going to be able to do with this current group other than Nick Bosa. I think he's definitely coming back. Maybe Leonard Floyd is going to be involved next year as well. But the 49ers got to reload the middle of this D-line. I mean, you had Eric Armstead for a while. He's gone now. You need someone in the middle of this defensive line. It's been an issue all year long. I mean, Achane, 120 yards, and it felt like every time they ran the ball up the middle, it was good for 8 yards, and they just get to the linebacker core immediately running downhill. Got to address winning at the point of attack on both sides of the line. Start with the trenches. Build within the trenches. You have plenty of guys to build around at all of the other positions as long as you can re-sign a few key guys. That's what we got to talk about next. The 49ers have several expiring contracts. What is the nucleus of the future for this team? What does it look like? What do they need to do in the offseason? Let's talk about that, the nucleus of the future, coming up next on the Locked On 49ers Postcast. Get ready to tackle the NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Postcast. Today, the 49ers eliminated from playoff contention. They were actually eliminated just prior to the start of this game when the Commanders beat the Eagles. I mean, wow, what a game that was. I wish that the 49ers result had been as exciting, but it was not as exciting as that one, as they fell 29-17 to the Miami Dolphins and sit at 6-9 this season. Leaves a lot to be desired. Again, a season of what ifs. Tony Romo kept saying it on the broadcast all day. It's just a season of what ifs for the 49ers with all the injuries and just random, terrible things that happened to players on this team to the point where it just felt like this team was cursed this year, to be frank. I mean, you had a player get shot. You had 2 players lose young children. Like, that is horrendous, horrific, like things that do not happen in large amounts in very public fashions like this. And the 49ers had all 3 of these things happen in the same year. Like, that is insane to me. And on top of that, you have all of these other injuries. It just felt like in every possible facet that this was just not the year for the San Francisco 49ers. So we turn the page on to next season. Yes, the 49ers still got more games to play this year. Yeah, they still got the Lions next week, which is just going to be a bloodbath. And they have the Cardinals 1 week after that. Still got 2 more games to play. But you're thinking about next year. We're building on what the 49ers can do to get back to the Super Bowl, because they're obviously not getting there this year. And we talked about what they got to do with rebuilding the offensive and defensive lines. But as far as what you have currently, I mean, this draft class that they just had is looking pretty good to me. Let's start with Renardo Green. Today, I loved what I saw from Renardo Green. Huge plays versus Tyreek Hill, stuck to him like a blanket and covered him one-on-one in a lot of really important situations in this game. He had an end zone pass breakup and 10 tackles to lead the team tonight. I really liked what I saw from Renardo. I mean, he was all over the place, being very involved at the line of scrimmage. He was showing us exactly what we wanted to see. I'm mistaken. He did not lead the team with tackles. He did. He was tied with Fred Warner, but they gave Fred 11, gave him one more tackle in this one. Led the team in solo tackles with 7 solo tackles. So Green doing things out there for the 49ers. I think that this is a guy that you can build around, and he's the very clear replacement in my mind to Charvarius Ward, whose contract is expiring at the end of the season, and I think he's gone. I think Renardo Green is the guy to step in there and take his place. And the 49ers have found their replacement at corner. Diamador Lenore, obviously, getting the contract extension earlier this year. He's a major part of this secondary going forward. Renardo Green, I think it's going to be those two guys patrolling the corner spots, and you're going to need to find someone to play the slot. But Renardo Green and Diamador Lenore, I think, are going to be the two main corners for this team going forward. Green, definitely someone you can build around in the secondary, along with Malik Mustafa and obviously Talanoa Hufanga. Hufanga, another guy with an expiring contract. Talanoa Hufanga, I think you got to bring him back. And if you don't, then you got to figure out what you're going to do at safety. But the 49ers had problems at safety all season long. When he was not out there, when he is out there, he's a great player, but he's hurt a lot. So again, you got to find ways to keep these guys healthy. Huff was hurt a lot last year as well. Obviously, the knee injury and dealing with ankle injuries this year and the hand injury. I mean, it just was one thing after another for him. Hopefully next year he can get back on the field in full strength. Another essential young guy that needs to step up is Ricky Pearsall. Obviously today, not his best game. Tons of pre-snap penalties. I got to assume that those will get worked out when he has a full offseason program with this team where he doesn't get shot in the chest and he's actually able to, spend all of this time working on all of these things. And he does look pretty good in these other aspects. When he's not stressing out about where to get lined up, he runs decent routes. Like he's a good, he's got good ball skills. He's got good hands. He's quick. He's shifty. He can get yards after the catch. I think when he figures out how he can work in with the rest of this offense, he will be a pretty decent player for the 49ers next year. I think that he, as far as his rookie grade, we got to give him an incomplete for this season because we didn't see enough of him. Dom Pooney, I think, is the best draft pick of this class. He is what you build your offensive line around going forward, and you want to make that right side of the offensive line. We've seen the left side as like the run dominant side for years and years and years. Maybe that shifts to the right. You go and get a dominant right tackle that can, maybe in the draft or in free agency, someone who can really win at the point of attack in the run game. And that right side of the offensive line can become very, very formidable, perhaps even more dominant than the left has been. But your staple, so all your young guys, if those three guys, those are the three essential guys, and Malik Mustafa, I think, is important in the secondary as well. But those three guys are hugely important to the future success of this team. If the three of them can keep taking steps forward, I think that this 49ers team is going to be in good shape next year to just focus on the interior of this offense and of this defense. Go draft linemen, and the number one offseason re-signing priority is Dre Greenlaw. You need to bring this guy back. You see what the defense looks like with him. You see what the defense looks like without him. With Dre Greenlaw in, this is one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. When he's not, this defense looks pretty average at times. It does not look like they are able to stop the run game, does not look like they are able to contain the edge, and it does not look like they are able to win at the point of attack. Greenlaw brings a level of nastiness to this football team that it desperately lacks when he's not on the field. And Fred Warner, he's been playing all season on a broken ankle. You can't say enough about All-Pro Fred, the best middle linebacker in the game, but he can't do everything himself. You need to have his running mate, Dre Greenlaw, back in a 49ers uniform next season. I think you need to bring back Hufanga, and you got to figure out what you're going to do. Maybe you don't bring back Aaron Banks, but you need to have a replacement for him waiting in the wings if you don't. But I think you have to bring back Aaron Banks, and I think you need to bring back, number one, Greenlaw, number two, Hufanga, and then Aaron Banks. We'll see. But the 49ers have a lot to work on. One guy, just briefly before we get on out of here, one guy that I could absolutely be very happy to move on with and not have in a 49ers uniform next year is Jake Moody. How many more Jake Moody misses are we going to tolerate? This guy, he is so up and down, so inconsistent, and you wasted a high draft pick on him. How many times do teams need to do this before they realize that drafting a kicker with any draft pick, maybe in the 7th round, maybe, but even then, I feel like that's a waste of a draft pick. There's so many kickers that you can get that are going to be just as good as Jake Moody. You just go find him off the street. So, you can go find, I can go in there and miss some chip shots as well if you need me to. Jake Moody been missing kicks all season long, all last season long. I don't want to see this guy missing any more kicks. I don't want to see him in a Niner uniform anymore. So we got to talk. There's so much more we could have talked about today. Debo had a pretty solid game. I got to give him some credit. Debo Samuel, 96 yards and a tutty. George Kittle, phenomenal. We did not give him nearly enough praise. 100 yards for George Kittle again today. George Kittle was amazing in his yards after the catch, running with physicality and punishing defenders who tried to tackle him. But ultimately, no run game, not enough from Brock Purdy down in the stretch, not enough from this defense. Brock just had so much pressure on him to do virtually everything for this offense. Still had 313 yards and a couple touchdowns, but threw the pick in the fourth quarter when he couldn't. And this running game, again, non-existent. This defense looks average when Dre Greenlaw isn't out there. That's kind of been the story of this 49ers season. That's why they're sitting at 6-9 and 2-5 away from Levi's and officially eliminated from playoff contention. We got 2 more games this season. Next week, Detroit Lions. I don't anticipate that going well, but we'll be doing a Locked On 49ers postcast afterwards regardless. So make sure you tune in for that. I can promise you we'll have some fun on the postcast, even if that game is as not fun as we think it's going to be. So thanks for tuning in. That's all the time we got for you guys today. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. The 49ers fall to the Miami Dolphins. This one just not a very fun result for the Niners, 29-17. We'll see what they got next week against the Lions, and we'll start turning the page onto next season, onto the 2025 season, and all these questions that loom over this team. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. We'll see you next time. Peace.